Alright, so I just thought I'd talk about this one thing that has to do with the Snyder Cut. And you might have seen me commenting about this, but I have a problem with people saying that Snyder only had an assembly cut or rough cut, of the film. I have a problem with that because he was done with principal photography in October 2016, and supposedly, the rumor is he showed it to the studio in January 2017. Alright, so that's already 3 months he was working on post-production exclusively, okay? And of course, as we know, you're already working on special effects during principal photography. The second you're done shooting a scene, you send it off to get the special effects done. And right around the time he was supposed to have shown his cut to Warner Brothers, that same month in January, Zack Snyder posted an image of Gal Gadot doing ADR work, recording her lines again for his movie, because you see the scene in the image, which I have up right now. You see the scene that she's recording for, and that scene is not in the movie. So this is my big gripe with the assembly cut theory, is because if it's an assembly cut, why are you doing voice work to perfect the scene, If it's just an assembly rough cut and you're not sure if you're going to use the scene, why are you doing ADR work on it? Why are you re-recording your lines for it if you're never going to use the scene? So it makes me believe for 100% fact that Zack Snyder was going to use this scene in the movie. 100%. Or else they wouldn't have gone back to redo her lines. The only reason they re-record lines is because the original shot, maybe there was a noise in the background and they just got to clean it up. And they're for sure going to use the scene. And that's why they're re-recording the lines. And if you go into February, Zack Snyder posts another image of him working with the editing guy on the sound mixing for like the fight scene in the tunnel and stuff. So, they're already far along in the movie. By this point, February 2017, they're just working on sound mixing. So you have to imagine that a lot of the movie is done. Like, we're talking special effects and everything is pretty much done. And that's why they're working on sound mixing. That's only stuff you do for the final print, That's something you do right before you get a picture lock. Or you already have picture lock and that's why you're doing sound mixing. That's the only reason they would do that, And you know how people love to say that the special effects weren't done, But when you look at these deleted scenes that have leaked out over the last, 7 months, you have the one scene of Flash saving Iris. And it doesn't look done at all, right? They are far away from getting that scene done. But then you look at all the Cyborg deleted scenes, and they're pretty much done. All that's left to do is render the suit, the Cyborg suit, onto Cyborg. They already have it cut out in white. Like, you'll see the deleted scene, and Cyborg it's like he's photoshopped out, and he's just like a white model. But it's the same size as the Cyborg in the movie, right? So all they have to do is just put the suit on to the blank model that they have in the scene. It's not like it's a super complicated thing to do. It's not like it's something that would cost a shit ton of money to do, right? So a lot of the Cyborg scenes already look pretty much done because Zack always envisioned Cyborg being the heart and soul of the film. So of course he would want to get all Cyborg scenes done. But the Flash saving Iris scene, I'm thinking that scene was far from done because Zack Snyder was going to cut it out anyway. Because when you think about that scene, it doesn't really seem like it fits into the movie that much. It's just a cameo for Iris. That's all it is. And if you're going to cut anything out of your 3-hour film, that should probably be it. So maybe he was saving that scene for last because he wasn't even sure if he was going to go through with that scene. He was probably planning on getting rid of that scene anyway. But still, the big point I'm trying to make is that you don't work on sound mixing and re-recording lines. You don't do that for an assembly cut or rough cut. You do that for the final cut or picture lock. That's the only time you would do sound mixing like that. And as we know, Zack Snyder still hasn't seen Justice League. As far as we know, he hasn't seen Justice League. And especially after he said what Russian family, I think last month or something. That clearly shows that he hasn't seen the theatrical cut. So why hasn't he seen it? Because he knows that it's not the movie Warner Brothers promised that they were going to make, right? And he knows that from the runtime of the movie. So he doesn't even have to see the movie. All he has to do is look at the runtime and see, oh my God, they cut out over an hour of my film. That's all he has to see. And I believe while Zack Snyder was there in January, February, March, he was working under the assumption that Warner Brothers was going to let him make his 3-hour director's cut of Justice League. He was already under that assumption. And of course, at the end of March, his daughter commits suicide. April and May, he tries to work through it and leaves. And he was probably forced out by Warner Brothers. But he still has, the director credits for Justice League. He's the sole person that has the directing credit for Justice League. Josh Whedon isn't a co-director. It just says Zack Snyder when it says directed by. So he still has a right to his director's cut. And from the looks of it, he had it near finished. It was near finished. We're talking like just a couple scenes away from being like ready to go. And I still don't know where that ridiculous $70 million mark is coming from. When people are like, it would cost $70 million to finish Zack Snyder's film. Where the fuck they getting that number? Where are they getting that? They're just pulling it out of their ass because he had all the principal photography done. He had most of the special effects done. And as we could tell by the cyborg scenes, most of the cyborg scenes were done. And he was already working on the sound mixing and re-recording lines in January and February and possibly March. So it's just like, how do people not put two and two together? Like, he clearly had a film there. He clearly was working on a 3-hour version of Justice League, maybe even a longer version of Justice League, and he was damn near done. And maybe that's why he left in May, because he was near done and he thought they could just finish it for him, right? Which they didn't at all. When he left, they took that opportunity as a chance to completely change the movie, which is like a completely fucked up thing to do, because this is not the same situation as the Solo film, because the original directors of the Solo film, they got forced out, and Ron Howard took over, and I think Ron Howard is the only credited director on the film, right? Isn't he? So you have to believe that some shady shit has happened with Zack Snyder. And maybe that's what Warner Brothers doesn't want to admit to, because it would probably be some legal problems for them, right? If they came out and said, yeah, we promised him we were going to finish the last couple scenes of his movie, but we decided to overspend on the movie by another $100 million and do the reshoots and completely change the movie. That's what we decided to do instead of helping make his film possible. I think they would get in a lot of trouble for that. So maybe that's why they're really quiet about this. Because if you remember, like, Warner Brothers was talking all throughout 2017 like they were staying true to Zack Snyder's vision, which they clearly didn't do. And if you look at the Solo film, when they changed directors on that, Disney had no problem coming out and saying that the film was going to be different than it was originally intended, They weren't pretending like it was the same fucking film, which Warner Brothers was doing for Zack Snyder. So you gotta think, how does Warner Brothers make this right? They make it right by releasing the Snyder cut, his director's cut, and then it's just water under the bridge, they move on. And people are kind of stupid when they say that they wouldn't change directions now, because Justice League completely, changed the direction of the DCEU. No, it didn't. Did you watch the film? Barely anything happened in it. That's kind of why the movie sucked. What was changed about the DCU? Nothing. In fact, nothing moved forward. Nothing about future movies was affected by Justice League. Absolutely nothing. Maybe in Zack's version, he had a cliffhanger for Justice League Part 2. But, you could just cut that part out, That could be like the 1% of the film we don't see. It's the cliffhanger for Justice League Part 2. That's the thing they can cut out. And it would still be the same. It still wouldn't affect the grand universe that much. We would just get to see Zack Snyder's version. I don't understand what the problem is. And I also don't understand how anybody can say that the tone of Justice League was the right tone to do, and this is the good direction for the DCU to go in. I don't understand how anybody could come to that conclusion, especially after how much money the movie lost, Obviously, the mainstream did not like the movie, or else they would have went to it several times. The movie was very average, okay? And that's not what a DC film should be. So, release the Snyder cut, is what I'm saying. It was near done. Put the extra money in to finish it. You already overspent by $100 million on the film. You might as well spend a few million more to finish it. It really is no difference to Warner Brothers. money-wise, it really is no difference to Warner Brothers, you know? And this could totally help their PR, because if they never release this version of the film, they are going to have a PR nightmare on their hands. We're talking like every single public event that Warner Brothers is at, and they're talking about the DC films, somebody's going to ask about the Snyder Cut. And if you're Warner Brothers, do you really want to deal with that for years? Or do you just want to get it out of the way right now, put out the Snyder Cut, incomplete or complete, doesn't really matter, just put it out, let everybody see it, and move the fuck on. But anyway, that's it for now. Comment below, let me know what you think. Obviously, I think a lot of the film was done specifically because of the sound mixing that they were doing in January and February, and Gal Gadot re-recording her lines in January. I naturally come to the conclusion that yes, they were near done. Like, they were almost done with the film. It was so close, guys. Because you don't work on that stuff unless you're already committed to what you have, right? So, that's it for now. Comment below, let me know what you think, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.